Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. And I'll remind you to join the mailing list just in case YouTube cuts me off. Also, I send out a weekly newsletter. I didn't get to it yesterday. I'm still writing it. I'll send it today. Fingers crossed, hopefully. Also, don't forget to join the conversation. We've got lots of robust conversations happening on the forum. This is about Operation Warp Speed and vaccinations and all sorts of interesting... it's an interesting outlook. It's an interesting conversation. So join us. There's lots going on. It's a very active forum. Here is news about the UN. We'll start abroad and then we're going to come back home. First, the UN's World Health Organization, WHO, elects Syria's Assad regime, which bombs its own people in hospitals, to its executive board. I urge the UN chief and WHO director to denounce this insult to the millions of Assad victims. Yeah, it seems like these international bodies regularly elect strange regimes to positions of power. Anybody else notice that? I don't know. It's been pointed out a few times. It's very interesting. What is further interesting is that nobody in positions of power seem to care. They'll diatribe long about, marginalized people, and we have to be inclusive and equity and blah 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 blah, all this stuff, and then they'll stay silent on something like that, right? Just weird, right? And I mean, hypocritical word. If you call someone hypocritical when they're being hypocritical, are you engaging in name calling or are you pointing out a behavior? I feel it's pointing out a behavior, and I don't think it's classified as name calling, right? Unless you're like, you idiot hypocrite or something like that. But I think if you say that's hypocritical, that's the same as like pointing out you're walking, right? Like you are engaging in this thing. No, I don't know. Genuinely wondering. Somebody said that to me on Twitter. Oh, like name calling is not very good way to argue, and then they blocked me. This is the Jen Veer or something like that, the Waterloo or Kitchener city councillor, who is advocating for if people just saw it her way, then things would be fine and people would not be racist anymore. And I was like, no, that's not how this works. Don't be foolish. I didn't call her foolish. I said hypocritical, but I thought foolish. Anyway, maybe that came through. Who knows? Anyways, moving on. This is London, and London had 1 million people on the streets marching against the vaccine passports and against the vaccine and against the lockdowns and all of that. No vax passports. So yeah, that's quite a lot of people marching in London, right? And the same is being repeated in lots of different places. There's lots of freedom marches that are happening around the world. I don't have footage from yesterday. Usually on Saturdays, I'll scroll through and tag some footage from Toronto or something like that. I didn't see much of it yesterday. Was there a freedom march in Toronto yesterday? I'll post the images tomorrow. CTV News is reporting Chinese city locks down neighborhood after virus upsurge. This is interesting because I think, is communist China the system that the rest of the world wants to emulate to deal with illness and all of the rest of it in the future? Because it seems like CTV is using this as a confirmation, as like, this works and they don't like it, but got to take your medicine, right? Here's the article. The southern city of Guangzhou, sorry, probably got that wrong, shut down a neighborhood and ordered its residents to stay home Saturday for door-to-door coronavirus testing following an upsurge in infections that has rattled authorities. Guangzhou, a business and industrial center of 15 million people north of Hong Kong, has reported 20 new infections over the past week. The number is small compared to India's thousands of daily cases, but alarmed Chinese authorities who believe they have the disease under control. India's not locked down. I showed you images from India yesterday, 2 days ago, from somebody in New Delhi, and he was like, everything's fine here. Don't believe the liars. Anyway, back to this. Saturday's order to stay home applied to residents of 5 streets in Luwan district in the city center. Outdoor markets, childcare centers, and entertainment venues were closed. Indoor restaurant dining was prohibited. Grade schools were told to stop in-person classes. People in parts of 4 nearby districts were ordered to limit outdoor activity. So this is being normalized by the mainstream media, and this is in no way keeping with a free and democratic society. I will show you, though, that there has been a ruling on the constitutionality of the travel restrictions. It's being appealed, but in Nova Scotia, a court in Nova Scotia, and I hadn't seen this. This happened in the fall of 2020, and I totally missed it. A court in Nova Scotia ruled that Section 6 was violated, but it passed the test for proportion, like it passed the Oaks test basically, and like, sorry about your luck, but it's important, and that's that. So, and they're appealing it because they disagree, but interesting that it even happened. I'll read about that. I'll tell you about that later. But they're trying to normalize this. This is definitely trying to be the expected response if they find something as small as 20 cases. And right next door is India, where they're finding thousands of cases a day, and they're not locked down. So again, we're seeing certain reactions in some places and no reactions in other places. And is there a discernible difference in the data between any two places that you decide to compare, one with restrictions and one without, right? And if you compare their seasonality curves to other places that are geographically close to them, do you come out with a line that looks similar? Like if you take like Michigan and Ontario. Michigan didn't have lockdowns, Ontario did. If you look at the curve, there's very little difference, right? So what's going on there? Okay, moving back home, back away from China, away from London, and back to Ontario. Ford government seeks to extend Dr. Williams' term as Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health. Yesterday, I came in after I do a little work period in the evening. I like to just, jot down my thoughts and what I'm going to work on the next day and blah, 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 blah. I work from 7:30 to 8:30 or 9, depending. And so I saw there was news yesterday talking about how they were going to replace Dr. Williams. And I thought, they're firing him? Like they're getting rid of him? They just extended his contract. And I came in and I said to my wife, they're firing Dr. Williams, blah, 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 blah. And I phrased it that way because I thought, that's what's happening. She pulled up the article and she's like, oh, well, his term was coming to an end. He was retiring anyway, blah, 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 blah. This is a nothing burger. Careful how you phrase things. You don't want to create a panic or create a false sense of what's happened. And I thought, no, they just extended his thing. Like they had to take it to the they had to take it to the legislature. It had to be approved and all sorts of stuff. And they extended it to September. Here, watch. This is David Williams. Hold on. David Williams. Yes. The Ford government doesn't want Dr. David Williams going anywhere, but there appears to be some pushback on whether or not Williams should ultimately remain as Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health. This was published November 23rd, 2020. Okay. On Monday, officials filed a motion seeking to extend Williams' term, but did not receive unanimous consent to keep Williams in the position until September, a source told 680 News. The government will now have to go through a debate and vote before being able to extend his tenure as Chief Medical Officer. Williams' term was set to end February 16th, 2021, when he was planning to retire. And then here's quotes. Quote, I'm very pleased to announce that in response to a request from government, Dr. David Williams has agreed to stay on as Chief Medical Officer of Health, Christine Elliott said Monday. The meeting was tabled this morning. We tabled a motion to reappoint Dr. Williams. Should the motion be passed, Dr. Williams will be reappointed commencing February 16 up until September 1st, 2021. Premier Doug Ford has said he relies heavily on Williams' advice when it comes to making health and safety decisions, such as enforcing restrictions and lockdown measures across the province. On Monday, Ford defended Williams, saying that he has all the confidence in his Chief Medical Officer of Health. This is what this man is made of, and I think he'll be incredible, Ford said. I don't believe in changing the dance partner in the middle of the dance, and he's a great dancer. So that was November 2020. And I think that's it, yeah. And here is this morning, or yesterday evening, breaking Monday, Ontario is expected to replace Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Williams. Dr. Kieran Moore, the highly respected Medical Officer of Health for Kingston, who it is believed will take over in a matter of weeks. Big move. So he's supposed to be working with Williams until the end of June, and then Williams is done. I think June 24th was the date that they gave. But it's not September. So is that, and I don't know. I don't know if it's, they weren't able to pass it to September, and so they made an agreement that said he could stay on until July or something like that. They didn't. So maybe somebody didn't want to extend his contract to September because they were in November, and for whatever reason they made some argument that extending it that long didn't make sense, and now they want to change dance partners. Or is it something else? Is it the fact that he's been calling for schools to be reopened and Ford doesn't like that? Right? I'm not sure. I honestly, genuinely don't know. But it seems like a strange thing when in November you go through the you go through the motions of trying to extend this person's contract, and then well before that was supposed to be over, with no like preamble, no prep to the public, like David Williams is retiring and we know that and we've prepped for this and this is the transition. It's like, okay, Monday this is happening, right? Seems like, if it was a prep for transition, if they were aware, if the things were going as planned, and nothing seems to be going as planned, let's be honest here, you would think that they'd roll this out in a way that makes sense to the public. Like, because the public needs to tell a story to themselves, like, oh yeah, the government's competent and not locking me in my house for extended periods of time for nothing, right? Like, oh, right? Like, this is why I comply, right? Because the government is competent. And then they make moves like this, where it looks like there's a row over schools and what the medical officer of health is saying versus what the government wants the medical officer of health to say. And bingo, bango, bongo, it's not September, but you're 10 years done, buddy. We're changing dance partners mid dance, right? It just seems... Somebody said bingo, bango, bongo like 3 weeks ago, and I wrote it down on I have a little pad of paper here that I write down things that just come to my head. And I wrote it down, and now I can't stop saying it. Anyway, here it is. Chief Medical Officer of Health is being replaced. Dr. Williams is being replaced. As the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic in Ontario shows signs of receding, the Ford government is preparing to replace the province's top doctor. This was May 29th at 8:30 p.m. So Saturday night, when the Leafs are playing the Habs, Game 6, they release it during the third period. And I mean, the Leafs are performing as predicted, right? But this is what you do. This is what you do when you want to bury a news story a little bit, right? So that's what I feel like is happening here, okay? So City News has learned Dr. Kieran Moore is set to take over the reins as Chief Medical Officer of Health from Dr. David Williams. Moore has been the Medical Officer of Health for Kingston, Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington since 2011. Williams, who has been the province's top doctor since 2016, has faced much criticism over his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, to me, it feels like if they had an amicable separation, if things were like, David Williams did a great job and now he's retiring, slap on the back, here's your gold watch, see you later, buddy. They wouldn't write articles like this, right? It seems like they're trying to be like, David Williams did a bad job and he's being replaced right now, yesterday now. Like, okay. Williams has been the province faced much criticism over his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ontario's COVID-19 Long-Term Care Commission lambasted Williams' response during the early days of the crisis. More recently, Premier Doug Ford has ignored Williams' recommendations to reopen schools for the last month of the academic year, turning instead to dozens of public health experts, local health units, and education stakeholders for advice. Yeah, what a weird thing to do, right? Oh, everybody wants schools reopened? I'll ask everybody but Dr. Williams, who's been telling me that the schools should be open for months. Thanks. We'll see you guys later. Oh, I guess I'll fire him now. Unbelievable. That marked a departure for the Premier, who has previously voiced strong support for Williams and even asked him to delay his pending retirement to remain at the helm of the province's pandemic response. Last November, Ford was quoted as saying, "I don't believe in changing a dance partner in the middle of a dance, especially when he's a great dancer." Seems weird. Seems like things don't quite add up, right? A Better Ontario says, this is interesting. Why during the middle of a supposed pandemic would you want to do this? Further, he's supposedly being replaced by the Medical Officer of Health from the Kingston area, Kieran Moore. Moore came up with extreme measures such as denying out-of-towners access to amenities in the Kingston area, such as shopping and restaurants, by having businesses check IDs. Moore has also made liberal use of Section 22 orders, such as placing wide restrictions around St. Patrick's Day, despite the fact that his region was in the green zone. He also instituted $5,000 fines for violations. To think that this man might become the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario, we are already suffering under the longest lasting lockdown in the world, is terrifying. Yeah, because it seems like just 15 more days until we can open Ontario, right? Just June 14th, that's when we get to do it. So 2 more weeks. Do you believe 2 more weeks? And then we're going to have this gentleman take over as the Medical Officer of Health. Do you think that things will get less restrictive? Do you think that we'll have a very open and free summer? I'm skeptical, right? Color me skeptical. I don't know. It seems like, it seems not likely. Kieran Moore will be Ontario's incoming Chief Officer of Health. He has skillfully navigated Kingston throughout the pandemic and is a valuable member of the Vaccine Distribution Task Force. We're in good hands. Yikes. Okay, David Lametti, the Justice Minister, who would not be the Justice Minister had Scott Bryson not resigned. he accidentally tweets that one of his campaign donors will become a judge. Whoops. Officially, Justice Minister David Lametti appointed 5 new judges across the country this week. On Twitter, however, Lametti announced 3 additional appointments, including that of Montreal lawyer Daniel Urbas to Quebec's Superior Court. The tweets were subsequently deleted. The minister's office says they were posted by mistake by the civil servants managing the account. In fact, Urbas, who's made political donations to Lametti in the past, has not completed the judicial appointment process. These tweets were removed, and we have contacted those mentioned to apologize for this very unfortunate error and the inconvenience that this may have caused, said David Taylor, a spokesperson for Lametti. I wonder if eventually he'll become a judge, right? Like, if he donates a few more times, right? What does it take, man? How do I complete these courses? Shucks, man, Twitter, right? Darn it. Okay, one of the green initiatives that they're trying to do is retrofitting homes to make them more energy efficient, so we use less energy to do the same thing. Have you seen the price of lumber lately? Anyway, so the idea is that they're using tax dollars to support these green initiatives, the renovations on your house. And so this person says on Twitter, responding to Jonathan Wilkinson. Jonathan Wilkinson says, saving energy saves you money. Today, our government announced the launch of the Canada Greener Homes Grant, which will help homeowners make their homes more energy efficient, creating new jobs across Canada and helps fight climate change. And Nicole in Alberta says, so my taxes go to other people who can afford home renovations when those people are against oil and gas and stop the oil and gas industry, resulting in my husband losing his career. And now we can no longer afford renovations or of any sort, even with a grant. Liberalism at its dumbest, right? It's a money redistribution scheme that does not benefit this person, right? Aaron O'Toole says, bonkers isn't exactly the word you'd want to hear when it comes to housing. To secure the future, Canadians need somewhere to live, and that place should actually be in Canada. The Globe and Mail is reporting like a headline on the 24th. It says, the Bank of Canada says the housing market has gone bonkers, and it can't do anything about it. I think it's a very deft dodge from O'Toole to mention the housing market and the bonkersness of it, but to forget to mention that the policies, the bad government policies, the bad immigration policies that are not based on any kind of growth numbers that the provinces were able to meaningfully keep up with, not to mention the Roxham Road streams of immigration coming into Canada. We've got a crisis that is not being made better because the federal government is completely federal government is completely ignoring it and doubling down and tripling down on it, saying that it's good for the country, right? And okay, when nobody can buy a house and the housing market is, to use the Globe and Mail and Bank of Canada's terms, going bonkers, maybe creating a fiscal situation where people can afford housing. But I mean, in that situation, if you do that, you're basically either stopping the upward march of housing until the people's salaries grow into it, right? Or you're going to have a real estate crash, and and by a crash, I mean like a 30% crash, price adjustment, 30% drop in price adjustment. So a $1.2 million house becomes like a $975,000 house. Is that enough? Does that change anything meaningfully for anybody? I mean, maybe on the, like, you're talking out of 100 buyers, does that conversation 1.2 million to 975, like to almost a million, does that really change your eligibility? Probably for a small percentage, but overall, it's not helping a lot of people who are making $50,000 and $60,000 a year, which is not bad entry, not bad even like for day-to-day living. But good luck affording $1 million house on that. Like, really? My rent is what? And I have to pay taxes on that? And the taxes are what? Yeah. Bonkers. Okay. You know what else is bonkers? This is just crazy. There are 6... Okay. How are we going to do this? There are warrants for arrest for 4 pastors that I know of. And this is through Twitter, not personally know of, but I've seen tweets or news articles about 4 people who are connected to churches who have current arrest warrants out. This is one of them, and I've seen tweets like this going out. Minister of Justice update on upcoming rallies. This is This is MLA for, he's an MLA in Alberta, okay? So within the government. And he says, Manitoba Justice has been in continuous contact with other districts since learning of an anti-mask rally scheduled for tonight. I'm pleased to provide the following update. 6 arrest warrants have been issued, and 1 arrest has been made in relation to attending, participating, and organizing gatherings in violation of public health orders. We thank the WPS for their cooperation aiding in these arrests. Your basic right to organize an event, free speech of speaking of an event on social media, etc., your right to gather with people peacefully, to protest, to meaningfully have your voice heard by the government is being completely undermined. Your right to gather for religious purposes, which is protected in the Charter, is being undermined by the government. They're arresting people for engaging in this behavior, but this behavior is not usually an arrestable offense. They've made it arrestable through health orders, basically. Imagine if they arrested 4 Palestinian or Israeli people who were organizing a protest, and they put out the exact same press release on that. Would that be acceptable? If not, maybe this is not acceptable, right? And this is not acceptable. That's the end of it. Here's one of the pastors who has an arrest warrant out for him. I'll just give him 30 seconds. I'll stop it when it seems to make sense. Here we go.
Good afternoon, friends. We are in an undisclosed location because there has been an arrest warrant issued out for myself, and I've been in hiding because I wanted to be able to be at church tomorrow and be able to hold off at least one more church service prior to being arrested and detained. So if you have been hearing what's going on, we will be gathering tomorrow at 10.
So just, I don't want YouTube to get angry, so I'm just going to cut them up there. You can watch the whole link. I think that it's interesting that we're in this situation. I think that it's interesting that it seems rational and reasonable to people to have the pastors of church arrested, to have organizers of protests arrested, and to have the leader of the opposition tweet this, right? In this context. Here we go. Aaron O'Toole on May 28th, 2 days ago, tweets, Islamophobia has no place in Canada. We must stand against all forms of hate and condemn these aggressive acts. Canadians of all faiths need to be able to live safely in our country. What about worship, Aaron? Should Christians be able to worship in Alberta? What do you think about that? Do you have a position on that? It's very interesting. It's very interesting that nobody's willing to touch it, not with a 10-foot pole. This is a bit of a hyperbolic headline. CFB Borden-based military officer faces life in prison for anti-vax speech. I don't know that he actually faces life in prison, and the article says as much. So the headline writer and the person who wrote the article are different people. Those are different jobs. Both have click responsibilities, though. I guess that one drove more clicks, that headline. But anyway, regardless. A reserve cadet instructor based at CFB Borden faces the prospect of life in a military prison, in Edmonton, for what he allegedly said at an anti-COVID-19 rally. And down to what he said, quote, I'm asking military right now who are serving, truck drivers, medical, essential, whatever you are, do not take this unlawful order in distribution of this vaccine, the speaker said. I might get in a lot of shit for doing this, but I don't care anymore. Rory Fowler, a retired lieutenant colonel and lawyer, says the clip stunned many military members, past and present. There was a near universal condemnation and bewilderment at the things that he was saying, at how he was portraying himself, Fowler says. It's the sort of conduct that one does not expect from an officer of the Canadian Forces. National Defence says Kendrises, he's the gentleman who was making the speech, worked with cadets or junior Canadian Rangers, but was not active with a squadron at the time and was removed from duties when the investigation launched. Kendriese will be subject to a court-martial. Fowler doesn't expect the process to get rolling until late 2021 or early 2022. The charge of mutiny comes as a surprise to Fowler and Christian Lepro, I've probably got that wrong, a professor at the Royal Military College of Canada and Queen's University. Fowler cannot recall the charge being imposed since the 1950s. Lefro, I've probably got that wrong. Leprech? It's terrible. that person explains that calling upon service members to blow off orders to help administer vaccines could create a mess. It calls both the legitimacy and the integrity of the organization and the organization function into question, hence the charge of mutiny. The maximum penalty for mutiny is life in a military prison, but Fowler says Kendrisi would more likely face a fine. So who knows? You'd think if they were going to go for like life in prison, I don't know. It seems strange to levy the mutiny allegation, but listening to what he said seems he seems to be directly asking people to do something that is counter to not following orders. And when you're in the military, I mean, there are very clear rules against that. So, maybe he's doing maybe he chose his words carefully. Maybe he was doing that to elicit a response. But I mean, is this the response you want? It's difficult to blow up your whole life, right? It's difficult to do that, and it seems like kind of what this gentleman's done. I hope that he gets fines, but who knows? Who knows? And I mean, sometimes being able to articulate what you believe is not compatible with your job, right? And sometimes your job will tell you to do something, and you need to say, or not need to say, but you want to say no, and you know that if you say no, the consequence to you saying no will be they fire you. But it's better to get ahead of that than say yes and lie to yourself, to change yourself, to continue to, do whatever that thing that they want you to do is. Like, if your employer asks you to cross a line, you're not obligated to cross it, right? Like, you have the agency to say no, and then that doesn't absolve you of consequences, right? The employer may then say, well, okay, I can't use you anymore, but that doesn't mean that you should then cross your line, right? Right. But it should be up to you, right? And it was clearly up to him. He made his choice, right? Okay, lockdowns. This is Quebec, Game 6, right? Yay. Woo, woo, woo. People are spinning towels and stuff. Here's So Montreal rode that to an overtime win last night. Ezra Levent says this is the ruling class. The anti-gathering laws don't apply to them. The no indoor sports laws don't apply to them. Churches and schools and restaurants and community sports are closed. But that's just you, the little people. Meet your masters, 2,500 VIP citizens at the Church of Hockey, right? On a Saturday night, Habs-Leafs game. Lockdown Canada, right? Not these guys, right? Wow, very interesting. Montreal mayor apologizes after being spotted on a terrace Friday night appearing to break the health rules. Well, isn't that interesting, right? Isn't that interesting? I was going to say this guy's not wearing his mask right, but he was. Here is another interesting one. Again, like rules for mayors and then rules for you and I, right? Like, you can't go to the park, but I'll go to a restaurant. You can't go to an eat-in restaurant, but the hockey players can, right? Sure. You can't play indoor hockey, but the hockey players can. OHL, too dangerous. These NHL players, just fine. I hope you enjoy your dinner at the restaurant, madam. Would you like more water? Madam. Anyway, here's why Ontario isn't in step 1 of reopening despite being past the 60% vaccination rate. It's a BS answer. Premier Doug Ford and his team announced Friday that a major public health milestone had been reached, with 65% of adults province-wide now having received at least one dose of their immunization against COVID-19. And yet, Ontario remains under a full emergency shutdown and stay-at-home order, even though the first step of the new roadmap to reopening is due to come into effect when at least 60% of citizens 18 plus have had their first dose. When questioned on the subject during a media briefing on Friday morning, in which he stated that public health would soon begin administering second doses, Ford indicated that his leadership is sticking to that June 14 date. There's more than just the 65% vaccination rate and the second doses, he told reporters. We have to look at the ICU capacity, and thank goodness we see it coming down. We have to look at the positivity rate. Wild. So they're moving the goalpost. They're moving the goalpost right in front of you. It's all tied to vaccine rates. Oh, well, no, not quite just the vaccine rates now, right? We're not quite back to normal, blah, blah, blah. It's very, very insidious. And if you don't see the goalpost moving, man, like, what is it going to take? What is it going to take? Okay, schools. My 7-year-old daughter is the most layback. Maybe I projected daughter. I think it's a daughter though. Megan Athley says, my 7-year-old is the most layback, easygoing kid. Nothing like me. Never complains. Never cared about the mask as long as it was cute. Goes with the flow. She's been reading the Pigeons books by Mo Williams in school. She loves them so much she's been making her own. The pigeon books at home. or making her own pigeon books at home. She made about 5 so far. Last night I found this one on her dresser. I started crying. As my sister said, we were so desperate for them to be in school because we wanted them to be with their peers and have some normalcy that we allowed the masks. That ends now. Never again will I submit my child to this. Never again will I be told what is best for my child. Masks come off Wednesday, and mark my words, I will not allow my children to be masked again. I will not allow people to tell me what is best for my child. Thank goodness a parent wakes up, right? And there's the mask book. It says, the pigeon does not want to wear a mask. And it says, you have to do what I tell you to do, wear this. And the last frame says, I can't breathe. Man, it just gets me. It just gets me because you don't need to do this. We don't need to do this to kids. And we've done this to kids because we want to be compliant. We want to be good. We want to be seen by the people who teach our children and by the administrators and the blah, 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 all these other people as compliant people who listen to the public health. But the reality is, if you sit in your office and mask mandated whatever, you can take it off. But a kid, and I've said this before, I've made this point before, a kid goes all day with people policing their masking. They don't have the ability to go to a private office and take it off and just have a mask break. They have to be sneaky. They have to hide under slides. They have to get detention, right? And this is happening. And we've done this. We've allowed this. We are allowing this still. Is that what's going to happen if the kids go back in June? Get your kids mask exemptions. It's possible. It's certainly possible. Here is Ottawa Public Health announcing that the Section 22 class order requiring masks on playground was a time-limited measure to address increased COVID transmission. This requirement has ended, but wearing a mask outdoors when physical distancing is limited is recommended to protect you and others, says Ottawa Public Health. I would love to see the data that they're using to justify this. I really would. Vanessa says, so kids were forced by adults to isolate, mask up, endure school to protect grandma, endure school while masked, I'll add, to protect grandma. And now that grandma is vaccinated, they still have to distance and mask up. What are we doing? Aren't we supposed to let the lower risk return to normalcy? I think so. Here is global news, and this is 16 hours ago. They say, as provinces begin to reopen, experts are advising Canadians to get vaccinated and follow public health measures if they want to travel somewhere in the country this summer. If permitted, are you planning to travel anywhere this summer? Can you wait for the lotteries, right? Ontario is handing out 40 lottery tickets for people who can go to other provinces this year. Get your application in before 4 o'clock and you might win the opportunity to book a hotel room in another province. Is that where we're going? I don't know. Here is the Newfoundland COVID-19 travel ban decision to be appealed. So this was posted October 19th, 2020. And I can't believe I missed this. Like I have Google triggers, and I had Charter Challenge in there, but I didn't see this. The organization doesn't agree with the ruling that provinces or territories have a right to exclude Canadians. So they're taking it to the Supreme Court. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is appealing a decision by the Supreme Court of Newfoundland and Labrador to uphold the province's controversial travel ban, which was introduced this spring to restrict the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. Michael Bryant, the executive director of the CCLA, said the organization decided to file the appeal with the Supreme Court of Newfoundland and Labrador by Monday's deadline because it doesn't agree with the ruling that the provinces or territories have the right to exclude a Canadian from entry. Bryant said Canadians have a constitutional right to move freely within their country, and it's not up to a province or territory to exclude a Canadian citizen. So I looked through the whole decision, and I wanted to see how the justification for the Oakes test was passed. And the Oakes test it's about proportionality and minimal application to achieve the goals, etc. And I thought that the judge kind of weaseled his way into his decision, kind of equating move freely in Canada to be like move residences. And he was saying like she wasn't moving residences, she was just going to her mother's funeral, and that's not really something that should be allowed in this situation. And he acknowledged that cases were low, and he acknowledged that the 14-day quarantine was effective, but said that it wasn't good enough, like that this person moved from Nova Scotia to Newfoundland and to a quarantine, they were just not allowed to do it. Like, cold-hearted. And I don't think, I'm not a lawyer. I'm certainly not a lawyer. But I think that our courts are not upholding our laws in a way that they should. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not the best person to give legal analysis or anything to that effect. But I think that the judge got this one wrong. He said that her travel rights, like Section 6 of the Constitution, was violated, but that it was acceptable because of the risk that COVID-19 caused. But this was in May of 2020, and the cases were going down, and blah 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 blah. So again, I think he got it wrong. But I'm just a dude in my garage, so blah blah. This is an interesting situation. A point of order by conservative Nellie Shin. She was born in South Korea, raised in Toronto, representing Coquitlam. Raises a point on Justin Trudeau throwing accusations of anti-Asian racism. I'll cue up the part that I think is interesting. Hold on. Here it is.
In addition to the Prime Minister casting aspersions upon members of this House who are only trying to do their job, I find it offensive that the Prime Minister is diminishing the significance of the anti-Asian crisis in Canada by using it to deflect attention away from an unrelated political issue of national security. Canadians of Asian descent do not appreciate being used in this way, since they too are concerned about the national security of their country and want answers. They're not political shields. They're Canadians who expect their Prime Minister to address their questions separately, respectfully, and with sincerity. The Prime Minister's...
First, anti-Asian crisis? Anti-Asian crisis. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I haven't heard of any anti-Asian crisis at all, really. And I think that it's interesting. So she's saying that using the anti-Asian discrimination, anti-Asian racism as a something to shame the Conservatives with is actually not helping anybody, and it hurts Asian constituents because they actually have questions around the same thing. So answer the damn questions. Right? Very interesting. But I'm cautious and I'm curious as to what anti-Asian crisis is in Canada, right? And honestly, Canada before 2015 was not a racist country. And now there's racism under every single rock. And it's wild. It's absolutely wild. Here's something else that is just incredible. And Tanela Artuso, who is a reporter at the Toronto Sun, said public health officials changed the May 31st expiration date on AstraZeneca to July 1st. This step is taken as Ontario struggles to get expiring doses into arms after storage information problems. Okay, so we've taken this experimental gene therapy and it's set to expire tomorrow. And Health Canada and a couple of people have said, yeah, no problem. Health Canada extends shelf life of AstraZeneca doses set to expire Monday by a month. So the value proposition seems really, really kind of strange to me. Please take this untested, expired gene therapy that we're calling a vaccination a month after it's expired. And no, this isn't an experiment. We're not experimenting with you. We're just wanting you to take this because it's going to help you. We think. Right? Like, how is this? How is this something that people look at and go, yeah? And especially in light of all of the missteps that they've, like all of the AstraZeneca stuff. Take the first vaccine that's offered to you. It's all safe. Everybody's doing the Team AstraZeneca. Like we did the Team AstraZeneca shots as Evan Solomon and Patrick Brown, Doug Ford, Christine Elliott. They were all like Team AstraZeneca. And you're like, I was not shocked, but I was like, what if this goes sideways, guys? Like, what a dumb thing to do. And now they're like, please trust us, trust the science, please we've been wrong this whole time, but please trust us and take this expired experimental gene therapy, please. Why should we trust anybody? Why should we trust anything they say? Anything at all. Everything has been garbage. Everything has been garbage. Everything. Like, they haven't been right once. So, yeah, sure. It's expired, but that's just fine, says Health Canada. No problem. Lori Goldstein says, World Health Organizations regarding expiry dates on AstraZeneca. Quote, any vaccine that has passed its expiry date, including COVID Shield, should not be administered. While discarding vaccines is deeply regrettable in the context of any immunization program, WHO recommends that these expired doses should be removed from distribution chain and safely disposed. The shelf life of a vaccine is a reflection of how long the vaccine retains its potency and stability at a given storage temperature, and therefore its effectiveness. The shelf life is used to establish the expiry date of each batch of the vaccine product. Expiry dates do not affect the safety of the vaccine, rather are related to the potency or amount of protection the vaccine gives. Source, expiry date and shelf life of AstraZeneca COVID Shield vaccine produced by the Serum Institute of India. Okay, so everybody super clear on that? We all super green? The potency of it is reduced. The safety is fine, but the potency is reduced. Does this make sense? Just take it. It's expired. Not as potent. It's fine. It's fine. Health Canada says it's fine. It's fine. Right? Are you willing to risk it? Like, who says it's fine? Who says it's safe? Who? Show me the data. What are they basing it on? How many hundreds of people are they basing this data on? Please, let me know. Okay, forced vaccines, and then we're going over to redacted. Roman Babber says, I am a proud Western U grad. To deny Canadian kids campus residency because of a personal medical decision is inconceivable. We can't force Canadians to jab directly or indirectly. COVID or not, we must remain a free Western democracy. The university should reconsider. And what is happening at Western is they're demanding that anybody in residence be vaccinated. Other notable people are speaking out as well. Alums of Western, both Roman Babber and Daniel Page, Dr. Page. He says many students are young adults, usually ill-equipped, hence why they go to university, with the life experience and wealth of knowledge to make long-term decisions about these things. So this kind of nudging seems coercive if a student wishes to live on campus. Not everybody sees things this way, and this decision to some creates an unfair situation for students. Universities should treat all students fairly. If Western chooses to have residence available, then all students should be qualified to apply for residence, regardless of their private medical history, which students should not feel compelled to provide. This form of safetyism compromises a core principle of the university, the fair and equal treatment of students. And there's much more. He's got 3 questions. I'm not going to highlight them right now, but I think that it's interesting to note that there are consequences to these unbelievably intrusive restrictions that are being put on people, right? It is not a zero-sum game. You're not just gaining safety and not losing anything else. Right? That's the point I'm trying to make. The main point, this didn't really fit anywhere, and I wanted to put it in YouTube and not in the redacted part. So I'm just adding this here, and then we're going to go back to vaccines when we move over to redacted. But I wanted to mention this because of the shipping shortages, the supply shortages. Have people in your family, people in my family have started talking about shortages, the time it takes Amazon to deliver something, the time it takes Walmart to have something in stock or more things out of stock. Although honestly, there are things in the grocery store aisle that have maintained their price in a way that I didn't expect. I thought things would be more expensive. I thought it would be more noticeable. It's noticeable on the bill, but when you're actually walking through the store, things seem in line, $1 or $2 within what they were. Like my apples, 3 pounds of apples is now $5. It used to be $4, right? It used to be $3.98, $3.95 or something like that. Now it's $4.95. Okay, notable. They didn't shrink it. Zayres did. Zayres shrank the apples, the carrots. Zayres had 3 pounds of carrots for whatever, and then they shrank it down to 2 pounds of carrots, which is like 4 carrots for $2. I was like, 4 carrots? Is it worth the bag, guys? Like, so it's interesting. But like some cereals, like you can get a big box of cereal for a relatively not a lot of money. So the food, I don't know if there's going to be food shortages in the short term, but goods shortages seem to be happening. Hot tubs, the tubes within a hot tub, they're specialized, I suppose. So the tubes within hot tubs are preventing hot tubs from being delivered by almost a year because they can't get these tubes. I don't know where the tubes are produced. I think it rhymes with China. But you see what I'm saying, okay? So there's product shortages, bicycles. If you've been trying to get a bike, there's other product shortages that have been happening. Now, the longer this goes on, do people retool their businesses? Do people start moving manufacturing back to the West? I don't know what the obvious answer is. Maybe this is a massive opportunity for somebody who's got some startup costs, and they want to have a small factory somewhere or something like that. And I say small factory because it takes forever and a whole bunch of red tape to get something built. Anyway, supply shortages, that's why I'm mentioning this. Here we go. The main port in Shenzhen has suspended operations until Monday due to COVID outbreak in the workforce. Not the news we needed going into this long weekend. It's the Memorial Day long weekend for the States, right? So this is day 2 of the Memorial Day long weekend. So this is... they're gearing up for summer. They've got $6 gas, $5 gas, right? $5 a gallon gas, which is a departure from the Trump years, right? But back to the Obama years, Biden years. So not great. And in line with that leaked email, although I'm not seeing a huge reduction in products yet, but I think that it's starting. I think that I've heard lots of people talking about that. And in certain products, tried to get a video card lately. I think that's unrelated, but still interesting to note. There's a bunch of other computer components that are harder to get recently as well. Okay, we're going to move over to Redacted, and thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.